Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Prabhupada. Oh. Sleep a little bit. Today is a special occasion of Vishnu Mahotsava and acceptance of sannyas by Srila Prabhupada. So there is just a one sentence about Vishnu Mahotsava. Vishwarup Lord Chaitanya's elder brother took sannyas on this day. Acceptance of sannyas by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada accepted sannyas on the 17th of September 1959 at the Shri Keshavji Gaudiya Math in Vrindavan. His godbrother, His Holiness Bhakti Pragyana Keshava Maharaj, presided over the ceremony. The Gaudiya Patrika gave an account of the sannyas initiation. The article included a biographical sketch of Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami. Excuse me. The Gaudiya Patrika the article included a biographical sketch of Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, listing the major events of his life. The article concluded, seeing his enthusiasm and ability to write articles in Hindi, English, and Bengali, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj gave him the instruction to take Vedanta sannyas. For nearly 1 year, he had been ready to accept sannyas. In the month of Bhadra, on the day which Vishwarup accepted sannyas, Bhaktivedanta Swami at Shri Keshavji Gaudiya Math accepted sannyas from the founder of the Vedanta Samiti, Bhakti Pragyana Keshava Maharaj. Seeing him accept this ashram of renunciation, seeing this pastime for accepting the renounced order of life, we have attained great affection and enthusiasm. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So because of this special thing that Prabhupada did, taking sannyas today. And what year was it? 1959. So that's 61 years. 61 years anniversary. Because of this, what Prabhupada did, we are sitting today. His mercy. So this is Srila Prabhupada in Amrita. Srila Prabhupada, I don't want money, student. And you say violence is violence, that's what you believe. Jesus turned the other cheek, and he expected his followers to applause. Srila Prabhupada, this Krishna consciousness movement is not a sentimental religious system. It is science and philosophy. Prabhupada explained that understanding the science of God was transcendental to Christianity or Hinduism. The real goal was to learn to love God. Second student, I have a question about Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti stresses that when you are speaking in the Western world, you should speak and present yourself as a Westerner, not as an Indian, or as you would speak in India. Instead of sitting on a raised dais and dressing in the robes of a monk, Krishnamurti would say, dress in Western clothes and sit on a chair. What is your opinion on this, Srila Prabhupada? Actually, a God-conscious person is neither a Westerner nor Easterner, so anywhere the devotee goes, as they receive him, he accepts. These devotees had arranged a raised seat, so I have accepted the raised seat. If they wanted me to sit down on the floor, I would have gladly accepted. I have no objection to this or that, but as devotees receive and give honor, that is good for them, because actually we should honor the Supreme Lord and His representative. Nowadays, it is different. Students are not learning to honor, but that is not actually the system. According to Vedic system, the representative of God must be honored as God. Another student loudly. Do you consider your movement the major form of enlightenment emanating from the United States today? What particular role does your movement play in the White House Psychological Warfare Department? Will you be coming to our 4th of July demonstration against the United States this year and take up the real political issues? Again, many students began shouting. Madhuri Swami took the microphone. I can answer if you like. Our movement is not from the United States. If we have some paranoia that everything is coming from the United States, well, that is your hang up, not mine. Applause. And second of all, our spiritual master came to United States to start this Krishna consciousness movement because he got a free ticket on a boat to go there. If we would have sent him a free ticket, he probably would have come to Australia first. So he is trying to spread love of God. He is not trying to start any kind of political movement. He is trying to spark a revolutionary consciousness. I think you are also interested in revolution. We are interested in revolution also. But we are interested in revolution which will help people to feel peace themselves, whether they are communists or Marxists or whatever it is you like. We are trying to help people attain happiness, whether they are. Madhuri Swami's remarks triggered the largest vocal protest yet. The commotion rose as students all over the hall began to shout. There was no possibility of a peaceful philosophical discussion. The devotees' greatest concern became getting Prabhupada out of the hall unharmed. Prabhupada rose from his vyasana and, escorted by his disciples, left by a side exit. A large crowd of students had gathered outside the door as Prabhupada emerged, but he entered his waiting car without incident. As he rode slowly through a cluster of students, a girl kicked at the car with her booted foot. And as devotees were getting into their vans, students threw stones. Finally, as the devotees drove off the campus, they had to pass under an elevated walkway, where some waiting students threw black paint down onto the vans. Riding in his car, Prabhupada was mostly silent, but he seemed disgusted. He said that in the future he would only give lectures in classes where he was invited. No more wide open lectures. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 A reading from Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, text number 38. So I think we have rules again. Para Devata Prasada Jigatatma Pratyavama Rishena Mupravritevya Putrivya Imam Yata Dayam Vipajya Bhuktanogam Cha Mahishim Amritakam Iva Saha Mahavimutam Apahaya Swayam Nihita Nirvedo Vriddhi Grihita Hari Viharanubhavo Bhagavato Naradasya Padavim Punar Ivano Sansara Paradivata prasadadigataatma pratyavamarshinanupravritebhya putrevya ida imam yatadayam vibhaja bhukta bhogam cha mahishim Sritakamiva saha maharuchim apahaya swayam nivita nirvedo vidigrihita hari viharanubhavo Bhagavatam naradasya padavim punar evanusasara You like the track? Okay, which is word for word. Paradevata of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prasada by the mercy. Adigata obtain. Atma Pratyavamashina by self-realization. Amma Pravritevya who exactly follow his path. Putrevya unto his sons. Imam, this earth. Yatadayam exactly according to the inheritance. Vibhajya dividing. Bhukta Bhogam whom he enjoyed in so many ways. Cha also. Mahishim the queen. Mritakam eva exactly like a dead body. Saha with Mahavibhutim great opulence. Apahaya giving up Swayam himself. Nihita perfectly taken to Nirveda renunciation. Viridi in the heart. Grihita accepted. Hari of the personality of Godhead. Vihara pastimes. Anubhava in such an attitude. Bhagavatam of the great saintly person. Naradasya of Saint Narada. Padavim position. Puna again. Eva certainly. Anusasara began to follow. Translation of Prabhupada by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narada. Report. As an unsated by Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka, Chetodarpanam Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, as soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna, as he himself advises. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. This should be our only business. One whose heart is not clean cannot think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But if one can once again place the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, he very easily becomes qualified to renounce material attachment. Mayavadi philosophers, yogis and gyanis try to give up this material world simply by saying, Brahma Satyam Jigan Mitya. This world is false. There is no use of it. Let us take to Brahman. Such theoretical knowledge will not help us. If we believe that Brahman is the real truth, we have to place within our hearts the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, as Maharaj Ambarish did. Savayamana Krishna, Padara Vrindayo. One has to fix the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart. Then he gets the strength to be freed from material entanglement. Maharaj Priyavrata was able to give up his opulent kingdom, and he also gave up the association of his beautiful wife, as if she were a dead body. However beautiful one's wife, and however attractive her bodily features, one is no longer interested in her when her body is dead. We praise a beautiful woman for her body, but that same body, when bereft of a spirit soul, is no longer interesting to any lusty man. Maharaj Priyavrata was so strong by the grace of the Lord that even though his beautiful wife was alive, he could give up her association exactly like one who is forced to give up the association of a dead wife. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Nadanam Najanam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama jamani jamanishware bhavata bhaktir ahoitu kitvaye. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your closest devotional service, birth after birth. For one who desires to advance in spiritual life, the attachment to material opulence and attachment to a beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, anyone desiring to cross beyond material nescience must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachment to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavrata became completely free from these attachments, he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great sage Narada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sajitam Tanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jugatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Kriya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nitya Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukha Kavati Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataram. By the mercy of spiritual master, blind man can see the stars, lame man can cross the mountains, and dumb man can speak eloquently. I therefore offer my respectful obeisance and lotus feet of my spiritual master. Namo Vishnu Krishna 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 By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narada. So Srimad Bhagavatam it's a very, very significant scripture for us to study. This Krishna consciousness is most wonderful, most powerful thing. And by practicing it, we can achieve ultimate goal of life. We also have to be aware of various types of pitfalls and challenges that are there on the path. Just like with any, even in this world, if you get a product, there has to be some there is usually instruction that comes with it, especially if it's like something very complicated and difficult to use. And if you learn to use it properly, you can take a full advantage of the thing. However, if you don't use it properly, you may even create some damage to yourself or to others. So this Krishna consciousness is the most important, powerful path in terms of the effect, for this age. It's so effective, this Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy name, rendering devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord. These are things that very quickly purify the heart. However, it has to be done properly. One has to learn the science of how to do it. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are so many examples of what to do, but also very significantly what not to do as well. And various types of pitfalls one can fall into, traps, distractions, misdirections, etc. One can learn in this Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can see that Maharaj Priyavrata actually even was executing the order of his superiors. He was renounced by Narada Muni's mercy. Narada Muni preached to him, and he had become renounced, and he practically gave up any attachment to material world, and he was meditating, just fixed on the Supreme Lord in Himalayas. But the world needed an advanced ruler, as we discussed in some previous classes. The best ruler, leader is a person who is very detached and is also very Krishna conscious. Then such a person can guide others to achieve ultimate perfection. And the purpose of this material creation, that is why Lord Brahma created this material world as a secondary creator. This ultimate purpose is to reform the fallen conditioned soul and send it back to Godhead. So for that, if you have a very Krishna conscious ruler, they call it Rajarshis, the saintly king, then that things become much, much easier to achieve this purpose. So Brahma asked Priyavrata Maharaj, can you become a king? Please, we need a great ruler like yourself to rule the world. And Maharaj Priyavrata accepted that. But at that time, from that acceptance, just taking the superior order of your authority is not necessary that your job is finished. As we can see, he was rendering this service to his ability. At the same time, as a king, he had many opulences, he had a beautiful wife, and actually become distracted for the time being. You become somewhat bewildered by that material wealth and opulence, and also attachment to the opposite sex. You become entangled, and that can happen as well to anyone, despite of the fact we practicing Krishna consciousness, we are executing superior order. Still, one has to be vigilant. One has to be strong and avoid the various types of distractions, attachments, and etc. So that's what we learn here in this purport and in this example of Maharaj Priyavrata, that when we have to learn and practice those things that can distract us. So one thing is the wealth that is mentioned here. So as well, even practicing devotional service, various types of opulences may come in devotional life. It can come, if you're living in an ashram, it may not necessarily come in the form of like a large number of material possessions or something, but also you can, become like very comfortable as well, in a sense. There is like a prasadam 3 times a day, and there is like you can like think there is no bills to pay. Obviously, temple president is take responsibility and he's got this headache of bills to pay, and other devotees who are doing fundraising, etc. They also taking that headache, but others may not be having that headache. So you may feel okay. I don't have bills to pay. I don't have that headache. It's a great life. I'm happy. It's a wonderful life. So in one sense, it is an opulence. It is an opulence. Some devotees are taking that headache, but others may not be feeling that headache themselves. They think, okay, my life is very happy. We have no problem. Or there is like lots of prasadam every day and stuff, and there's no problem. I don't have to cook. The cooks are cooking, so I don't have to cook. So my life is easy like that. So one can, become attached to various types of, easy life. So therefore, one has to work very hard in devotional service and kind of don't take advantage, but feel a gratitude. A grateful person, when he gets certain things in life, he doesn't forget them. He's very grateful. And he wants to reciprocate. He wants to reciprocate somehow or another. So I've been given a facility to render service, so let me work very, very hard in devotional service to please the Lord. I've been given everything. And materialist is not aware or conscious of this fact. Is got whatever is got, or she's got in terms of a job or a car or a house or etc. And it's just not aware where it came from. I think, oh, it's because I worked very hard, I got this phone, etc. But the Lord sanctions everything. But even a blade of grass cannot move without the Lord's sanction. This is the situation that everything we got is the Lord's mercy. So we have to be very grateful and reciprocate with the Lord's mercy. I've been given everything, and I just can offer a sincere devotional service to the Supreme Lord for everything He has given. And if He doesn't give, that's also mercy. So we are satisfied. Whatever comes in our life, we use it in Krishna service. Whatever the Lord takes away or doesn't provide, this is Krishna's mercy as well. We are grateful. And if we do become attached to something, then we try to get some guidance. Priyavrata Maharaj, as soon as he noticed that attachment is rising, he didn't just allow for it to go on. He immediately started to do something about it. He used his intelligence, he used the teachings that he received in the past from the great sage Narada Muni, and his Krishna consciousness awakened very, very seriously, and he also went through some internal regret. That's also a good thing. A little bit of that is fine. If you just become, there's two different ways of dealing with it. When you notice that you have some attachment, and sometimes we're not even aware that we have attachments, but in association of devotees, by reading scripture, we become aware of our attachment. And when we become aware, we can become very discouraged and despondent and even depressed. I have no hope, and this material attachment is so deep. How I am not gonna advance in the Krishna consciousness? It seems to be a hopeless situation, and we may lose enthusiasm for devotional service. But actually, we should take inspiration from Maharaj Priyavrata. He also become aware. Like, alas, he was saying, how condemned I have become, because of my sense gratification. He become aware. I become attached. I become fallen. And he become disgusted. He said, I had enough. I had enough of this material gratification. And then instead of remaining in that consciousness of just, some people just keep playing on that thing, I'm too fallen, I'm too attached, I'm too fallen, I'm too attached, I'm too fallen, too attached, and become more and more discouraged. However, you took an action. You didn't remain in that situation. You took an action and said, okay, now I am becoming free from this attachment. I'm taking fully back, to my Krishna consciousness. As well for us, it can happen when we become attached in the course of our devotional service, or we become aware of attachment that is already there and already exists within us. There is some regret is helpful, there is some remorse is helpful, but one should not remain in that, just over meditate that negative situation. Or somebody maybe even points us out, hey, look, you're attached to this thing, what's going on. This is the advantage of association of devotees. Because, for example, Maharaj Bharat, he was getting attached to deer, and because he wasn't an association of devotees, and nobody told him, nobody told him you are becoming attached here. But in association of devotees, if there's new attachment growing or some old attachment is becoming more clear and apparent, somebody may come to us and say, look, you're becoming attached here. There is need to do something about it. And then we can do something about it. We can become a little remorseful, a little disgusted as well. Sometimes we even need to fall into the same trap again and 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 again until we become disgusted, because we have a 10th class intelligence in this age of Kali. So sometimes we need to do it again and again and again, the same mistake, until we become disgusted and say, that's it. I had enough. Now I want to do something about it. And it's not easy because we don't have necessarily that strong intelligence that we just, by seeing others making a mistake and we think that's it, or we make a mistake ourselves and we think that's it, and sometimes we have to repeatedly make a mistake and we become like really, really disgusted with ourselves and we think, that's it. I don't want anymore to make this mistake or to be attached in this way. And then with that intensity, and the intensity is very good for us. Otherwise, we tend to not to do much about it. In Kali Yuga, we just kind of tend to float around, remaining as we are. So sometimes Krishna puts us in a situation which is a little bit of pressure, which is a little bit of challenge, so that we can let go our attachments, and there's a bit of misery there's a bit of struggle, and then we can let go by becoming a bit quite intense. We can become quite intense, and that intensity is the way to purchase Krishna, or at least to make another step towards Krishna. That intensity is very good, and we should welcome it. When we become aware of our shortcomings and etc., and we develop intense desire to let them go, that is helpful. And that is welcome, that is wanted for us. And with that intensity, when we pray, in that intensity, when we seek association of devotees, or in that intensity, we remember some instructions, take shelter of Shastra, and we can see here Priyavrata Maharaj took shelter of the teachings that he received from Narada Muni. Then, with that intensity, we can make a shift. We can make a powerful shift in our Krishna consciousness. It can be in a gradual steps, but also through intensity, we can even make a like a quantum leap as well. You just let something go. You make a decision of faith. And as we yesterday we were in our discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, this Chinese proverb came up. There was one devotee, actually Chaitanya Vallabha Prabhu, just before he joined, Sharanga Thakur came to see him because they were in the same university. They used to run. They used to do some running every morning. So Chaitanya Vallabha was getting really into Krishna consciousness, and Sharanga Thakur came to see him. Not so, just just a few days or a week or two before he joined actually the temple. So Chaitanya Vallabha was sitting in his university room, and he was chanting japa, and he was meditating on the poster of a Chinese proverb. In that Chinese proverb, it said something like that. I can't remember verbatim, but it says, "For the sailor, in order to reach the new lands, you have to lose a sight of a shore behind you." I don't know whether that makes sense. So when the sailor he kind of goes sailing and discover the new lands and keeps sailing, then the shore becomes more and more smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, it becomes even invisible, and then like a Christopher Columbus, that as well. He just had a faith. I'm just gonna go west and I'm gonna reach India. He had this faith. He kind of left there and had just only a certain amount of food and etc. He took a big risk. So sometimes as well for us, it required a little bit of leap of faith and reading from Shastras, hearing from the devotees, and hearing about this next step that we have to do. Sometimes we have to make that next step and leave, the shore behind us, the shore of attachment. And on the shore is comfortable. I know this space, I know this land, I know these plants around me, etc. It's very, very comfortable to be within that attachment. But this is a paradox actually that and often we are suffering in that condition. On that shore of the comfortable attachment, we are suffering. But this human condition is so sad and paradoxical that we rather suffer within that attachment rather than finding a solution and moving away from it, moving away from that misery and taking a risk and taking a leap of faith and taking a boat and sailing away from the shore to find the new wonderful land or oasis in the ocean. That it is a paradox that we rather stay and be miserable on that island. In fact, usually that attachment is just a small little island we're sitting, but there is a beautiful land and a beautiful Hawaii somewhere there, of a discovery that sometimes we just need to leave behind. And hearing, is so important to understand that there is this wonderful land without the attachment, and there is this wonderful land of Krishna consciousness, and we just have to take a leap of faith to leave the comforts of our attachment and move forward in our Krishna consciousness. And sometimes it is in a small way, and sometimes it's a big quantum leap that we just completely sit in a boat and with the favorable winds of Shastric injunctions, with a captain of spiritual master and his guidance and instructions, and with in a team of association of devotees, we are on this boat of ISKCON, and we are sailing back to Goloka Vrindavan, confidently. So sometimes we just have to make this massive leap of faith, and this is how we grow in Krishna consciousness and overcome our attachments. So wealth is one big one, and another big one, as well mentioned here, is attachment to the opposite sex. So that's also, a very deep attachment. It is considered like a deep knot in the heart that that is can become a very big obstacle, because the soul is looking for relationship, is looking for that lost relationship with Krishna, which is so deep and so satisfying and so fulfilling, that there is nothing greater than this. But in this material world, we are covered by emotional nature, and we're trying to find that fulfillment, that satisfaction in this relationship of opposite sex, and also in the same sex as well. Over the last number of years, that's also people started to seek very strongly. So that that attachment becomes very strong, because it is to some extent it fulfills our strive, it fulfills our hankering, that we find at least a little bit of what the soul is looking for, that unlimited relationship with Krishna that is so deep, and Krishna knows us so well that reciprocates with our love perfectly. But in this material world, whatever glimpses of that reciprocation we get, we can become very, very attached to that reciprocation that comes, uh, and it becomes like a big hard knot, and especially when it's accompanied with sex life, that one gets some gratification for the senses. It becomes like a very, very addictive, very, very addictive, and a lot of people become even obsessed, by that. It becomes like on and all. That even there is groups like of Sexaholics Anonymous and that kind of thing, that is so bewildering and capturing, because people don't know anything else, and even their relationships has become just a physical thing. It's often there is nothing more subtle, just seeing each other as a object of gratification, and has become so sad, that in practical relationship it isn't anymore there of like having some sort of similar nature and pursuing some sort of similar goals or anything. It's just become like a physical gratification, and that's all, exchange of physical gratification. There is no more than that. And so it has become like that. So, one is just going from one physical relationship to another and another and another and another. So the people physically become gratified, but in the past, when people had deeper relationships, that wasn't so much based on physical exchange, and essential exchanges. People at least used to get also mentally satisfied in relationship, because it was a bit more deeper. We are into similar thing, we're doing the similar thing together, and we were looking for children, etc. So there was some emotional, and except of physical gratification, there used to be a little bit more of emotional and mental gratification. So people used to be able to function much better, even within material realm of sphere. But now, despite it, because that is lacking, and people just getting just a physical gratification of their senses, and culminating in sex life, so they are no more even satisfied emotionally and mentally, and therefore, despite of like having like a so many sexual or physical relationships, people may, and large number even sometimes, people feel lonely, despite of the fact of having many relationships that are very shallow. People may feel very, very lonely, and may not be able to admit that to themselves, despite of the fact, of deep in the heart feeling like that. So that loneliness doesn't get satisfied despite of the shallow relationships they have. And so this is the sad situation of a modern day, that knot of attachment becomes so strong, and the people get pulled by it every day, that even now, scientifically, psychologists say that if you don't indulge in sex life, then it will be very bad for you psychologically. You will feel very bad. So this is the nature of attachment. If you're very attached to something, and if you don't get what you are attached to, you may be feeling a little bit sad and miserable. And then it's stated that this is a scientific fact that if you don't get this, you will be miserable. Yes, it's true. If you don't get the object of your attachment, there will be dissatisfaction. But there is a higher level, there is a higher platform, is to become detached. If you don't need of the object of all your attachment, that is the much higher level of happiness. And even higher than that is to become attached to what is beneficial for you. Like instead of being attached to like alcohol, etc., cigarettes, you replace it with something higher. And in that, with that higher pleasure, you are able to become detached from a lower thing. So therefore, this is Krishna consciousness is such a wonderful process that we can experience this higher relationship with Krishna and the pleasure and satisfaction that comes with it, that we can become truly detached from things like wealth, attachment to opposite sex, etc. And of course, not everybody necessarily can become like a monk and just live without, wife or a husband. Um, a lot majority of people may need to still have that emotional connection with opposite sex, but not based on a physical attraction or based on a sex life, but actually is based on a partnership to work together towards serving Krishna. So in that way, one is handling one's emotional attachment in a healthy way, at the same time practicing Krishna consciousness and supporting in Krishna consciousness. But when if one is able to, have this deep connection with Krishna and the devotees in the ashram, and one can practice, being like a brahmachari throughout one's life. That his life is simple like that, but there's not large amount of people who can do that. So whichever situation one chooses to become detached, one has to judge according to one's nature and whatever situation and a background in life, but one has to practice strongly this Krishna consciousness and cultivate more and more attachment to Krishna and become more and more detached. So this higher taste is very significant. And in Priyavrata Maharaja's life, then he reached, when he went through all this grihastha life, then at one point he awakened, as a brahmachari, when he was living in Himalayas. He had this higher taste of Krishna consciousness. Then he just again, in a family life, you have to juggle things, looking after the kids, working, and becoming maybe even attached to some sense gratification, etc., at least to some extent. But then at one point, he reached this one point and he just gave up everything, and he fully, took shelter of Krishna consciousness, awakened that taste, awakened that wisdom that he once practiced when he was, living in Himalayas under the direction of Narada Muni. So are there any questions or comments in this place?
This is a really nice example of the Chinese proverb of going from one shore to the other. I was wondering if you could clarify, because it's quite easy to give up things actually for other things, but there might be other material things. You can just be going from one place to another.
From one material thing to another material thing.
Say I give up my house, a place where I stay, and then the need or the attachment is all the facilities still required, so then I have to get it somewhere else. So I was wondering, just like in that example, if you can clarify it for myself as how you explain it in terms of going from a level of giving up a level of consciousness rather than, say, a certain situation for a higher level of consciousness. I wonder if you could just clarify that a bit so I could understand.
Yes, a good point. It's a good point. When it's material attached, you may, restrain your senses and be away from the attachment. Let's say even physically give up things, but you may be in a different situation where you don't have much possessions or situation whatever the case may be. But that attachment manifests in a different way. Like in that, there's a famous story where there was like a householder, Ramanujacharya. He was a householder who was very, very attached, but then by the mercy of attached to his wife, actually, there was some darshan, I think, of Lakshmi Narayan that was procession through the street, and this guy, rich man, he had such a beautiful wife. Instead of looking at the deity of Narayan or Lakshmi, he was looking at his wife. And he was also attached. And then Ramanujacharya somehow showed him mercy, and he became then very, very detached by that mercy. But then there was brahmacharis, who were very attached. They had nothing, but they were very, very attached in the ashram. And there was, and actually they were very criticizing that man, look, he was so attached to his wife and opulence and etc. So Ramanujacharya decided to teach them a lesson, and he actually mixed up the kopins, which is like an underwear of monks. He mixed up the kopins in the different places, and they got into massive fight. Who misplaced my underwear, and like fighting and kind of thing. So that attachment was there, even they were living externally detached environment. Internally, they were still very attached to the small thing. Because they haven't received that mercy of Guru. But this couple, they were very, very detached. And then Ramanujacharya sent those brahmacharis to steal some jewelry from them, just to show how detached they were. The brahmachari stole them. And then in the morning they woke up, and the wife was saying, to husband, I think that our temple is really struggling. It must be some pandemic or something. They're really struggling. They came and they stole, my jewelry, and then he started to chastise her. And Brahmachari was looking behind the curtain, chastising, why they didn't turn on others when they're. Oh, what happened there? Also, why just only one earring is missing? Why you didn't allow the other earring to take? And she says, I was trying to turn around, after when they took one jewelry, I was trying to turn another kind of another side, so they took another one, but they got scared and ran away. And he was saying, how you could do that? You should have done something more. And I think they gave something as well to the temple after that. So anyway, it's just like a different type of attachment can manifest. You maybe give up certain things, but you still be very attached. Even in this, temple situation, manifesting in various types of things. And as you say, so that could, as you said, that could be seen as, we left one thing, but I'm still attached in another way, like that. But one thing is by certain things we do give up, and certain things we cultivate, we can still be using in Krishna service. Like, we may be attached to some very particular type of work, and and sometimes we don't do that type of work at all, and sometimes we get opportunity to do it, but for Krishna. So in that way we cultivate detachment, or sometimes we we have a certain possessions and then we use it in Krishna service. We have a certain, attachment to a certain type of possession, and sometimes we give it up or sometimes we use it in Krishna service, like that. And then one can become slowly detached and also be here at the same time about how wonderful the place is on other side of the shore. Like Christopher Columbus, he knew that India is a wonderful place, very, very opulent in those times. It was people who went over the land and they brought the things back from India. It was like, wow, it was just amazing. So because he knew that India is such a wonderful place, he was prepared to load the ship with all the stuff, and just go off the shore in order to reach India. And I don't know whether he had a faith that whether the earth is round or something like that, by the time maybe the understanding was there. And that Copernicus, I think he was the first one to say, that the earth is round. And then he thought if I just go, more over the ocean, eventually I'm going to reach India. So he had that faith by hearing from the people who have been to India. So when we hear more and more and more Srimad Bhagavatam, then we can develop detachment because we get a higher taste and we get a higher faith that there is something better. So like in this Paramdrishtva Nivartate verse 259 in Bhagavad Gita, we may still have attachment to sense objects, but we're able to restrain the senses by experiencing higher taste. So this is what happens. But if we don't, if we may be still living in a temple, etc., but if we don't absorb ourselves in hearing and chanting, that attachment can still manifest in various types of ways, and even that subtle sex life can manifest, in hankering for position, and all that kind of thing can still manifest in us having a desire and strive for control, and that kind of thing you can manifest as well in various ways. But if one is experiencing higher taste by hearing and chanting, one can become really detached and humble and do the service properly. Like, Priyavrata Maharaj, he did become attached to his situation, and that become eventually a distraction. But one can actually still be in that situation, but by experiencing higher taste, one can be fixed in consciousness, fixed in Krishna consciousness, and not be distracted by position, not be distracted by feeling that I need to be in control and that kind of thing. One become purified. But also, if one has that propensity, one can use it in Krishna service. But at the same time, it has to be backed up with a very strong hearing and chanting and studying of Srimad Bhagavatam. I hope that answers your question. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna,